who's a social studies teacher at South Central High School in Pitt County, and Mike Hawkins, who's the president of Pisgah Enterprises and former Transylvania County Commissioner. I declared 2024 as the year of public schools in North Carolina because our public schools continue to thrive and improve despite chronic underfunding by the legislature. More than 84% of North Carolina's children still go to public schools, and that percentage is even higher in rural counties. North Carolina has more nationally board-certified teachers than any other state in the country. We have an 87% graduation rate, and our public schools issued 325 workforce credentials last year. Surveys show strong support and satisfaction from public school parents. We're here today because we know that private school vouchers are the biggest threat to public schools in decades. They don't improve student performance, and we know this from other states that have tried vouchers. But in North Carolina, we won't know if our taxpayers' money for vouchers is working because the North Carolina private school voucher program is the least accountable in the country. We also know in other states that private school vouchers crater state budgets, with rural schools being hurt the worst. And in other states, we have seen rural Republican and Democratic legislators stand up against these voucher schemes. They know who gets hurt the worst. We need people to stand up now. Today, I have just vetoed House Bill 10. That veto can be upheld if enough legislators in both parties tell Republican leaders that they don't want to vote on a veto override this year. I invite everyone to go to governor.nc.gov and click on the red public school emergency banner at the top. That site tells you what the for-profit school lobbyists are not telling legislators. It tells you how much of your individual county public schools will lose in the first year. It tells you how many rural counties have no private schools that accept vouchers and how many more have only one or two. It tells you how public schools provide certified teachers, full accountability, food, transportation, the teaching of special needs students, while private schools don't have to provide any of that, while getting to choose which students they want to accept or reject. It tells you that applications for private school vouchers have increased because if House Bill 10 becomes law, even the wealthiest people in the state can go pick up a taxpayer-funded government check for kids they already have in private schools. And who can blame them? Let's be clear. I am not against private schools and parents choosing that option. It works for some children. But I am against taking taxpayer dollars out of the public schools and giving it to private school vouchers for the wealthiest North Carolinians, and that is exactly what House Bill 10 does. Instead, we could use this money that House Bill 10 appropriates, give public school teachers an 8.5% raise and a $1,500 retention bonus I proposed already, plus hire more teacher assistants and counselors and have significant money left over. There is still time to stop the expansion of private school vouchers. Wealthy people will never let their private school vouchers be taken away if we don't stop it now. Already, the legislature has fallen woefully behind on teacher pay and invests $5,000 less per student than the national average. North Carolina will not remain first in business if we become last in education. Let's save our public schools. I'm now going to call on Wendy Craven, member of the Burke County Board of Education. Wendy?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I want to thank Governor Cooper and his staff for inviting me to speak this morning, and I also want to thank Dr. Jennifer Griffin, Superintendent of Hickory City Schools, for allowing me to take the day from my school to speak with you. I hold a unique perspective as a school board member in Burke County and as a high school principal in Hickory City Schools. Before I present you with data and talking points, I would like to say to you that I am an educator first and a Republican second. Allow me to share some data with you. 85.5% of school-age children in Burke County attend public schools. Based on an analysis of the voucher expansion and House Bill 10 by the Office of State Budget and Management, Burke County could lose $456,892 in the first year. There are 5 private schools participating in the voucher program in Burke County. Some of the private schools in Burke County have raised their tuition, so the vouchers are not necessarily helping the lower income students that it was initially targeted to help. There are several talking points that I would like to share as well. There will be a loss of money for Burke County schools and other school systems will seriously damage opportunities for students. Loss of money in a critical time as we continue to address learning loss and a mental health crisis. COVID stunted many of our children. It was a trauma not only due to possible family loss, but also social losses in daily interactions with their peers and the isolation felt by many. Lack of funding for Leandro. Public schools need more money to support our children and youth. I don't understand how the Leandro case can be fought for years with no progress, and then miraculously millions of dollars are found to fund vouchers for private education. Once you open the doors to giving parochial schools state dollars, then you must open up these same dollars to all religions. For example, if a satanic church opens a school and asks to be a part of the voucher program, the school cannot be denied based upon religion. Private schools don't have to serve all students, just as Governor Cooper stated. They pick and choose who they want, excluding special needs children, children of different religions, if it doesn't align with what they believe, students with different lifestyle choices, and many more. Private schools recruit athletes and then want to participate in sports with public schools. Private schools don't have to follow the same accountability standards as public schools. Public educators have to continue to hold a license to teach by completing CEUs. The curriculum in private schools isn't standardized. This is not to say that there aren't some outstanding private schools in North Carolina, but most of these don't accept vouchers. Homeschools are generally online courses, which, as you should know by now, is not the best way for most students to learn. Analyzing public education data during the COVID years proves that. If these online programs aren't located in North Carolina, then there goes our tax dollars. As with most things, there are always extenuating circumstances. Life is not always dark and light. There are highly acclaimed private schools that are designed for students who have very specific needs, such as schools for students with dyslexia and autism. I fully support the General Assembly allocating additional funds to local school systems to support these students. This should be a joint decision between the parents and the experts in these fields. A process should be put in place to show justification for this need. I say all of these points so that the general public understands that a can of worms that an understaffed Department of Non-Public Education will have to monitor. There have been cases where schools were counting students that did not exist and getting voucher money. This is a major problem. Education is the cornerstone of our nation, and once it fails, this country fails. Instead of continuing to divide and conquer, which shows a complete lack of leadership, support public education, love all children and youth, and remember to separate church and state. Abraham Lincoln, a Republican, said, "Be sure to put your feet in the right place, then stand firm." Well, being right for me as a logical and less emotional leader is simply to do the right thing. Don't get caught up in the latest agenda and go along with your party just because that's what someone tells you to do. Be a leader and not a puppet. Remember where you came from. Most of the senators and representatives, I believe, came from public education. Do you care about your constituents that you took an oath to represent, or do you just care about yourself? Personally, I'm tired of the Puppet Act. I am Wendy Craven, a Republican board member, Burke County Board of Education, member of the North Carolina School Boards Association Board of Directors, and a proud public educator.
which threatens the future of public education in our state. In Washington County, 89% of our school-aged children attend public schools. We don't have any private schools, so expanding taxpayer-funded private school vouchers will severely hurt our community. The Office of the State Budget and Management has analyzed this voucher bill, and Washington County could lose $39,000 in state public school funding just in the first year alone. That loss of funding will mean fewer resources for our students, teachers, classrooms, resources that are already stretched thin. This bill encourages families to send their children to private schools in other counties, draining our public schools and dividing our community. Our students deserve strong, well-funded schools right here at home, not a system that insensitizes things to leave. House Bill 10 doesn't just redirect taxpayer money, it weakens the backbone of our county by undermining public education. As chairman of the Washington County Board of Education, as a member of the North Carolina School Board Association Board of Directors, I can tell you that our public schools need more support, not less. Governor Cooper's veto is a stand to protect every child's right to a quality public education. Our public schools are the cornerstone of the opportunity, and we must invest in them, not dismantle them. So today, I join Governor Cooper in urging the General Assembly to think carefully before they consider overriding this veto. We cannot afford to let this bill pass. It's time to stand up for our public schools, our communities, and most importantly, our children. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlos. We now have Elise Cannon McRae, social studies teacher, South Central High School in Pitt County.
Good morning. My name is Elise Cannon McRae, and I want to first of all thank Governor Cooper for having me today, and also I want to thank Pitt County Schools for growing me into the educator that I am. I am a product of public education, and I am also a public educator in Pitt County Schools. 85.5% of school-aged children in Pitt County attend public school. Based off the analysis of the voucher bill by the Office of the State Budget and Management, Pitt County can lose $2.5, almost $2.6 million in state or public school funding in the first year alone with voucher expansion. Funds that are diverted from public schools to private school voucher programs could and honestly should be used used for much-needed resources in public school. Instead, $625 million in new funding is going to private school vouchers that could have funded the following things: an 8.5% public school teacher raise, a $1,500 retention bonus for educators, which all of these were outlined in Governor Cooper, I have respect, I'm sorry. Anyway, sorry, yay humor. Okay, so we're proposing the governor's budget, and the leftover funds would be used for critical needs. When I think about these funds, I realize that these funds could go to technology, new and updated facilities, textbooks, and support students with disabilities, students that have IEPs and 504s, which private schools do not have to tend to and cater to, because we support our students with disabilities. This prevents the expansion of pre-K, teacher pay raises, and the purchase of school supplies. And as an educator, and also I am a parent whose child is getting ready to head to kindergarten next year in public school, I want my child and every child in North Carolina to have the education they deserve, and that requires the funding. And the word I'm going to use is accountability. As a public school educator, I am accountable for teaching the standard course of study for North Carolina through NCDPI. I am accountable to maintain and teach and provide a protected classroom and facilitate diversity and culture. Those are part of the standards and the requirements of a public educator. And so legislators, I'm holding you accountable right now in this moment. You have to do right with this public funding. You have to support public education, the great equalizer in North Carolina. We're the great North State, where we need to live that way. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Elise. We now have Mike Hawkins, the president of Pisgah Enterprises and former Transylvania County Commissioner. Mike.
Thank you, Governor. You know, one of the advantages of going last is that the people who vote for you say about 90% of what you were going to say. So I will be fairly brief, but there are a couple of things that I want to talk about. And one of the things, first of all, my name is Mike Hawkins. I am from Brevard. I wear two hats at this podium today. I'm speaking to you, firstly, as someone who spent 12 years as a Transylvania County Commissioner. 9 of those 12 years as chairman of the board. I was elected, as a Republican, I was elected, I was reelected, and reelected again. And so I have an intimate knowledge of the problems of local government, the financial problems and the operational problems of rural local governments all across North Carolina. I also have an intimate knowledge of the interactions between county commissioners and school boards, because I lived that for 12 years. So I have a particular expertise in that. I'm also a small business owner. I have served on a number of, and through my work as a commissioner and being a small business owner, I've served on a number of economic development boards, both locally and regionally and statewide, and so I have a certain expertise on North Carolina economic development, in particular rural economic development in North Carolina. So I'm not going to repeat what things have already been said, but I do want to add two things to what's been said. The first thing, I don't think you can understand this issue at all if you don't understand the really symbiotic relationship that public schools have with the rural communities that host them. Public schools are one of the two cornerstones of rural life in North Carolina. The other being churches, being the faith community. If you go to rural communities around the state, there are two cornerstones that create the unique sense of place for all of these rural communities. One is the faith community, the other is the public schools. Now, why is that? What do public schools provide in that sense? It's far beyond test scores and graduation rates. What public schools provide is this commonality that we lack in our society today. We don't have a lot of things in our society that bring us together as people. But in rural North Carolina, the public schools provide a commonality. Everyone's going to the public schools. Everyone has children who are going to the public schools. They all experience the same thing. They have common events that they're all at together all the time, and not just football games. it's pageants, it's blood drives, it's band concerts, it's all the things that make a community. And I'm telling you, in rural North Carolina, people are proud to say, I'm a tiger, or I'm a golden lion, or I'm a blue devil. It means something to them in a way that's really something that if you don't live there, sometimes it's hard to understand, but trust me, it's very real. And it's important. So you can't understand this issue without understanding that threats to public schools threaten not just the public schools, but they threaten the very fabric of rural life in North Carolina. So, with that context, let me say the second thing that I want to say today, and that is, as a former elected official who understands the financial challenges of rural governments in North Carolina, I am extremely concerned about the income or the revenue displacement that will take place under this bill. Now, a fair question would be say, well, yeah, you're going to lose this money, but you're also not having the students, so your expenses are going to go down, right? I don't get it. I don't understand what the big deal is. Well, if you ask that question, you're displaying a fundamental lack of knowledge about how rural school systems economics work. The efficiencies of scale, the economies of scale are different in rural areas. In my county, I'll use my county as an example. We're projected, I saw figures that said we might lose over the next 5 years, we might lose 120, 150 kids to this. There'd be a leakage of 120, 150 kids. Now, our school system is a small system. It's 3,500 kids total. So 120, 150 kids is not that many kids. It is a lot of money. It's $1 million a year in revenue. But it's not that many kids, and they're going to be spread out across the system. It's not like we're going to lose 120 kids all in the second grade or all at one school. They're going to be spread out across grades and across schools, so you're going to have essentially the same expenses. What you might think in theory, you would have variable costs that will go down with the loss of students. In this example, you won't, because you're going to run the same number of school buses, you're going to have the same number of teachers, you're going to have the same number of classrooms, your utility bills are going to be the same, your extracurriculars are going to be the same. There are not going to be a lot of variable costs involved. There will be a variable income difference, though. And what's going to happen, and everybody who knows anything about local government knows this, is when you have $1 million hole in your operating budget and you do not have a corresponding decrease in expenses, then the only place that Board of Education people can go is to their local county commissioners, to local governments, to try and make up some of that difference. And that's going to happen. It's not going to happen this year. It may not happen next year. There's going to be a lag, but it's going to happen. And I'm telling you, as someone who lived it for 12 years, it's not going to turn out well, because it's going to be a hard sell for boards of education to go to county commissioners and say, we need this additional funding, this significant chunk of additional funding, just to maintain status quo, which is the question, which is the argument that they're going to have to make. So, I have very trouble for this bill because, last thing, the last thing that's not been mentioned, the other thing you need to understand about public education and rural North Carolina is that in most rural counties in North Carolina, the school system is the county's largest single employer. And that's something, sometimes people look at that and use that and say that pejoratively, kind of say, well, that's out of whack. Why is the school system the largest employer in your county? I always argued, on the local level, local government, what do we do that's more important than educating our young people? But whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, the fact remains that in most rural counties in North Carolina, the school system is the single largest direct employer. So what this bill is doing, it is disrupting the revenue stream of one of the two fundamental cornerstones of rural life, churches and schools, it's disrupting the revenue stream of the schools, one. Two, it's disrupting the revenue stream of the largest employer of rural North Carolina. And three, it's setting up this slow fuse bomb that's going to come in 2 or 3 years, where you've got this hole in local school system revenues that are going to have to be covered by the taxpayers of those rural counties, who in most cases are the ones who can least afford tax increases. There's a reason why in Texas, when this came up last year, it was rural Republican representatives who stopped it. There's a reason why in Georgia, when this came up last year, it was rural Republican representatives who stopped it. There's a reason why in Tennessee right now this is being debated. In the current voucher law in Tennessee, if you look at it, it excludes large portions of rural Tennessee because the rural Republican representatives in Tennessee said, we'll vote for this voucher plan, but you need to carve our district out. We don't want it to apply to our district. Those rural Republican representatives in those 3 states know what I just told you is true, that this is an existential threat, not just to the school systems of rural North Carolina, but to the very fabric of life for rural North Carolina. So, Governor Cooper, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for standing up for rural North Carolina by vetoing this. And thank you for giving the legislature a chance to take a breath and consider this, and consider whether this is what's right for rural North Carolina. Thank you, Governor.
Thank you, Mike. And what you've just heard from is just a representative sample of the strong feelings of rural North Carolina about this legislation. So, Jordan, let's take a few questions on topic on this bill first, and then I'll be glad to answer other questions that you might have on your mind.
Michael, is there another topic that we want to refer to?
No, I don't know, Michael. I don't know. Maybe.
Governor, Republican leadership has pushed back on some of these claims, arguing that they have increased per pupil funding year over year, that there have been Republican efforts to try and move forward with teacher pay. We've heard obviously some concerns expressed today and in years past over these points. If this bill is eventually overridden, what is your concern long term for the health and existence of these public schools if they don't have the funding to move forward with hiring specialists and teachers?
This legislation is a real threat to our public schools. They've set aside $4 billion over the next decade. They've also put in place tax cuts for the wealthy and for corporations. There's not going to be any money to invest in public schools and better teacher pay. Already they're behind, $5,000 less per student on average than the national average. Teacher salaries are dropping. We need to put a pause on expanding these vouchers to the wealthiest North Carolinians, and we need to make sure that we invest in our public schools first.
Other on topic? About public education? Great, thank you.
What kinds of conversations, if any, have you had with Republican members of the legislature who are from some of these areas?
A number of them have come. I've visited a lot of schools over the last few months, and a number of them have come and listened to my presentation, have gone around in classrooms with me, and a number of them have expressed concerns about this. I hope that there will be enough of them to go to the leadership to say, let's take a pause, because there is a one-vote Republican supermajority in both chambers. But I think this is a bipartisan concern. This is more about rural North Carolina. Most of these private schools that get this voucher money are in our urban areas, and that's where the money will go, taking tax money out of the rural counties and into the urban counties. If they're representing their people, they will have concerns about this. And I talked to probably 10 local newspapers in the past week. They've asked me questions about it. I hope people will talk with their legislators in rural counties and let them know how important this issue is to their communities.
Why is this any different from, let's say, the private school grants that the General Assembly has been giving out for decades to private colleges and universities to educate the state's children?
Well, first, we have a constitutional requirement to make sure that our public schools are strong to provide a sound basic education to every child. Secondly, this reduces money from the public schools directly, but it also decreases the pie. And the magnitude of the amount of money we're talking about doesn't approach those other areas.
Other on topic? Michael? We've heard in a lot of the ribbon cuttings and economic announcements the impact of strong education from community colleges and state universities. We heard a couple speakers mention concerns that this could trickle down and impact lower education. When you're trying to attract companies to relocate or expand operations in North Carolina, what's the potential downside if this doesn't?
They know we have the best community college system in the country. They know about our array of public and private universities, one of the best in the country. So we're strong in that arena. But there are beginning to be questions about our public schools and whether we have the commitment to invest in them. There's a lot of good happening in our public schools, and I think that businesses like the fact that we've been flexible enough to provide 325,000 workforce credentials just the past year for people who are not going to go to college for 4 years. That cannot continue if we don't significantly improve investment in our public schools. I've said before that we're not going to continue to be first in business if we become last in education, and we are moving in that direction if we go and expand private school vouchers because the money won't be there.
HB10, obviously it includes more than just vouchers. Can you speak to your opposition for anything else in the bill?
Well, there are other provisions in the bill that are there. I've vetoed the sheriff's bill a number of times, and obviously I'm still opposed to that. There's some positive things in this legislation, but it is greatly outweighed by the damage that it's going to do to our public schools.
Any other on-topic questions?
Okay.
All right. Questions on topic? Go right here.
Thank you, Mr. Governor. Nicole Killian from CBS News. We know in the statement that you put out yesterday regarding Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, you said that Donald Trump and Republicans have known who Mark Robinson is for years. At the same time, he is your lieutenant governor, and I know that you were from different parties, but were you ever aware of these posts before yesterday?
So I know that Mark Robinson has been making incendiary statements since he's been elected. And in fact, I said he should resign a couple of years ago. Donald Trump and North Carolina Republican leaders have known about his character and the kind of statements that he's made, his disrespect for women, his incitement to violence. So this is something that was known across the board, yet they have continued to support him even to this very minute. They have not withdrawn support for them. And I think that when people go to the polls, they need to think about these candidates who have supported and encouraged somebody like Mark Robinson and continue to do so.
So are you saying you knew about these posts yesterday?
These posts, he has made lots of posts and lots of statements in the same vein. So there's not a whole lot new here about Mark Robinson's character. They have known, Republican leaders and Donald Trump have known who he is. They've embraced him. They've supported him from day one.
Next question, Gary. How do you think this affects the possibilities of Democrats to win positions which you have been unsuccessful in recently, particularly high court, and also just being able to prevent supermajorities in the legislature?
Most judicial candidates, most candidates for council of state, most legislators that are Republicans have endorsed and embraced Mark Robinson. I think every North Carolinian, when they go to vote, ought to look at whether a candidate has done that, because that sends a strong message about who you are as a candidate.
Next question. Last one.
What is your reaction to the news about Mark Robinson yesterday, and how do Democrats intend to maybe tie Robinson to other Republican candidates?
Republicans have tied themselves to Mark Robinson. That is obvious from everything they have said about him, supporting him. And I think the people of North Carolina need to take notice of the fact that these Republican leaders, people who are running for office, have continued to support him and still to this very minute are continuing to support him.
That's the time you've got. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you guys very much.